I'm Ryan Brown, and this is the Unvarnished podcast. And today I'm joined by Katie Liddiard and Stacy Minch, and the Boozy Broads, as they are otherwise known. And today we wanted to talk about a subject we go back and forth with on and off forever, just because it's we're all trying to figure it out, which is the business of art. I guess it'd be useful to talk about our experiences from kind of the naivete we came in to this whole world with, things that we've learned along the way. None of us, I don't think, feel like we're experts on the topic. No. It feels a little weird talking about the business of art, but I think we've collected some experience over the years that might be useful for people to hear about. I mean, I don't know if anybody who's watching this has seen the other podcasts with you guys. So you guys want to just quick introduction or something?
Sure. What do you want me to include here?
Just whatever.
Okay. I'm Katie Liddiard. I've been painting for a while now. I don't know. I paint mostly still lifes and florals, and I'm still waiting for them all to sell.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
Well, I'm Stacy Minch. My work is up on the wall here. So I started studying with Ryan, actually, in 2016, I think. So it was several years ago when I was kind of part-time on and off, raising little kids. And Ryan's atelier was a big thing for me because it was available here. And since probably 2020, I've just been kind of doing it on my own and trying to be a professional. So that's where I'm at.
All right. And I've talked enough about myself. I don't need to say more.
Are you sure you've talked enough?
Yeah. One more time, Ryan.
I'm pretty sure I've said enough. So I think maybe we could start with just ideas on different ways you can make money as an artist. I remember years ago, I posted on Facebook. This is a long time ago. I said it's easy to make money as an artist. Some comment like that. Mm-hmm. And what I was thinking when I posted it was like all the various ways you can do that, from just how you market yourself. I wasn't just thinking about gallery work. I was thinking there's you can go into game design, you can go into illustration, book covers. I mean, it's Magic the Gathering kind of thing. There's so many different avenues or stylistic choices you can go in art. What I really meant was it's easy to make money as a creative person. And I remember, I think it was David Gluck who came back at me pretty hard, like, no, it's not. You're crazy. Mm-hmm. Which I totally understand, and I'm actually on his side with what he was saying. But there's a lot of ways, is what I'm saying. There's a lot of ways you can go.
There are a lot of different avenues.
A lot of different avenues.
Get revenue.
The direction we went was the fine art direction. We went.
The dumb one.
There's limitations that come with it. There's limitations that come in any field. But the one we chose was fine art, which typically then means what? When I was starting out, the idea was get in a good gallery. Mm-hmm. They're supposed to build you up. They're supposed to kind of promote you as an artist. And then eventually one-man shows, and you start getting more and more collectors, and your work gets more popular over time. And that was kind of the expanse of what I thought you had to do. If you made good work, collectors were going to come.
You've obviously been in the game a lot longer than either of us have. And I feel like when you first got back from Florence, that's exactly what you were doing. But something with like the 2008 crash changed the gallery game. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is that not on the path of what you were...
2008, it was really 2010. I think that it took a few years for the galleries really to feel the hit. I mean, what we do is a luxury item.
Right.
You know, so it's totally unnecessary for people to buy. And it's one of those things that when the markets take a downturn, luxury items take a hit, typically. Right. I don't know if that's going to be true forever just because the wealth gap is expanding so dramatically.
Right.
It seems like now when the market goes down, the middle class and the lower middle class feels it, and the rich just keep getting richer. So maybe that's good for us. I don't know.
But I think that the gallery game has changed quite significantly, not only after the crash, but also with social media. That I don't know exactly how to navigate where to go and what to do at this point.
It kind of feels like the galleries want you to have established yourself already before they will represent you. It's a different game than like, I'm going to find a new artist and represent them and catapult them and promote them.
Right.
It's like, if you haven't made it already, we don't want you.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. When I started selling, it's probably 2003, 4, probably before I was ready. I mean, my work then was not very good, but galleries were doing well. It seemed like print magazines were still a big thing. The galleries, it felt like the galleries were a lot more proactive in terms of promoting you, getting you articles, taking out full page ads, putting on exhibitions. You know, they would have several exhibitions throughout the year, and then of course one man, one woman shows as well. And it felt like they were taking a far more active part in the building of artists' careers. Then it was the two events that kind of coincided, which was 2008 and social media exploding, where now it feels like, I mean, there's fewer galleries, there's fewer brick and mortar galleries. Right. They're still taking 50%, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but no, you know, as an artist group, we don't have like a union or something where we can stand up to them. And so if one or two artists speak out, the rest of them aren't, and you have no voice, really.
I think this has turned into an artist union movement right now.
Right now, we're going to start.
This thing.
We'll have to choose union reps and have elections and whatnot. So I think social media, a lot of galleries closing their brick and mortar, they became a lot more conservative. For instance, I was in a gallery in Jackson Hole, and their calling card, you know, they would say it all the time, was that they didn't just sell Western art. They had a lot of different art that they were exposing to that community. I mean, I think they had some Casey Bawes, they carried my stuff, which isn't, you know, typically Western. And they had a wide range. And then, but at 2010, boom, they're done, all Western. Wow. You know, it's a business, so you kind of have to follow the money to a degree. But also, they just stopped to a large degree. There's still great galleries out there, but to a large degree, a lot of the galleries, I don't see a whole lot of articles, and that's that goes to print. Magazines aren't that prevalent, as prevalent as they used to be, but I don't really see a lot of articles, you know, full page ads. I don't see. I mean, I guess they could be really promoting you on social media, but it doesn't seem like they do put a massive, you know, campaigns together for that the way that they could.
Galleries, I mean, they typically do not have the following that the artists
have bigger followings than the gallery. Yeah.
So they might have the connections, but that doesn't mean that they're promoting you in terms of just to the general populace.
And I mean, if you're a gallery that has a roster of 40 to 100 artists, it's not necessary for you to, or, you know, it would be overwhelming to try and promote everyone.
Right.
But you just need to make your money. So it doesn't really matter where the sales come from. To me, it feels like, and I've said this before, it feels like most representational galleries are acting like furniture stores at this point, where they just wait for people to come in. You pick out what you want. If I can help you, let me know. If you have a question, let me know. And then they'll help you load something in the car if you want it. But they don't necessarily promote the artists.
Right.
Like if you're a contemporary artist and you're in Forum or Marlborough Gallery or Gagosian or something, and you're doing wacky nonsense, you have to sell the artist. You have to tell people why this is, you know, $1 million or whatever.
Yeah.
Because the art itself, it doesn't really matter. You're selling Damien Hirst.
Right.
You're not selling the paintings that his little peons make, right? I mean, he's not making his own work. Jeff Koons isn't making his own work. Candy Wiley isn't making a lot of his own work. So what you're selling is Candy Wiley, right?
Yeah.
So they do it, and I think that creates a massive gap in what the value of contemporary art is versus representational art. Is you, on the one hand, you're just waiting for people to buy pretty picture, and on the other hand, you're selling the value of the brand, really, right? So that's what I've seen. I've seen that gap kind of widen in representational art. Then you have a flooding of really skilled artists because, you know, there's more and more schools out there that are teaching people to do really well. There's more avenues to learn all of that, you know, foundational information. There's a lot of really good work being produced, but then the schools aren't necessarily fostering more clients. They're developing great artists. They're not developing great connoisseurs. And I think that I don't know if it's the school's job, but I would think that I think that's a place that's been overlooked. That's something that's been overlooked by either galleries or I don't know where to. I'm not placing blame. I'm just not sure if that's being addressed by anyone.
Right. So you kind of hope that there's a market. You know, there's a market for everything. So you kind of assume, well, you start a school and there's a market for the people that are going to be ending up creating this artwork. But unfortunately, that market hasn't really come to fruition as we, when we were young and naive, would have thought it did.
Yeah.
You know, I always assumed, I paint and then it sells, right? That's just what happens, right. But that's not what happens. And so even though I paint pretty florals, which definitely have a market, I'm still struggling to sell my work. And part of it is on me. I'm not the most business savvy. I'm not the most social media savvy, but part of it is that the general public just doesn't understand how much art costs, what goes into it. They don't understand artists in general in terms of how they work and what, you know, anything about the whole world. And so, you know, expecting them to just come up with this, oh yeah, I'll spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on this painting is just not going to happen.
It's just kind of not something that would even enter someone's consciousness within our culture because we as Americans are just so practical. We buy things that we need. And I think it's a cultural value that we are industrious and we're practical and these things are only for the elite, you know. It's it's not something that enters the general consciousness. Not that they couldn't afford it if they valued it, but it's just something they wouldn't even think of.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think, you know, I've started filming for that TV show, Art City, which is maybe a third filmed, and then my budget. I never had a budget. My credit card maxed out. But the idea with that was that there isn't really a general narrative around great art in the public, and if you do talk about art, it's always the wacky stuff. It's always kind of the weird, and people don't. There's not a respect for it really in the general conversation. And I think that
Except from a financial standpoint for those particular things, if that makes sense. There's a respect for like the Damien Hirst and whatever because of the financial aspect of it.
That's sort of like owning Van Halen's guitar.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's not necessarily the art that has a value or is respected. It's a collectible.
Right.
It's the Michael Jordan rookie card. It's it's a status symbol almost. Right. But I think that when you look at what cooking shows have done for, the average person's appreciation for food, it's been global. It's I think it has brought a familiarity and an accessibility to the conversation around food that didn't really exist before. And so fine dining was kind of similar to fine art.
Right.
It was too fancy, or however people thought about it.
Right.
And I think that that's part of the problem is how do you for one let people know that this kind of art is being done again,
right?
Meaning representational fine art that has a long-standing tradition, and then how do you let people know? How do you teach them about how it's made to give them a sense for the effort that goes into it? How do you expose the general public to the artists who are making it? And how do you let them in? How do you bring them into that world and give them at least a general appreciation for it, a feeling that they can talk about it, a feeling that they can take part in it, in that conversation.
That is a common complaint when, I'm talking to someone and, oh, what do you do? I'm an artist. Oh, I don't know anything about art. I mean, you do. You don't realize that you do, but you've been told that you know nothing because of the stuff that you've seen. You're like, oh, I don't understand that.
Right.
Oh, well, because you don't get it. Well, you do. You understand that that's probably not for you. Right.
As an art establishment, if you walk through a gallery with an uneducated person, where are they going to go? What paintings are they going to naturally respond to? It's going to be the Frederick Church. It's going to be the Alma-Tadema. It's going to be the Bouguereau. And then the other stuff makes them feel stupid.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
The non-representational stuff is the stuff that puts the barrier up.
Yeah.
But they do know intrinsically as human beings
what they like,
what they're looking at when they see a representational painting.
Yeah, right.
And so the door is open, but the art establishment, the larger art establishment, modern art establishment, contemporary art establishment, whatever you want to call it, has made the general public feel stupid so that the elites can feel more special.
Right.
And it's something that you have to somehow gain access to through some, highbrow nonsense. Right. When in reality, if you know what you're looking at,
right?
When it's representational art, the door's open. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off as I normally do.
Shocker. No, it's fine. So you're talking about, the fine dining has now kind of been opened up through like Netflix shows. And I would interject, like also with social media, there are some really great accounts that film really well the cooking process. And I have learned tons. And I was not a bad cook before, but I have definitely upped my game since following these accounts. And I feel like that is absolutely possible with art as well, but no one is quite getting to the point where it is crossing over to the general public that they want to see this over and over again and try their own stuff and, work at it and educate themselves and whatever. There's some really good accounts, but they're not quite making that. They're not bridging the gap.
People are more motivated to eat than they are to make art.
Yeah, and understand
eat 3 times a day.
Yeah, 100%. It makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
But there is still a huge need within most people to create.
I think so.
Right?
And I think that could be focused on greater in the education system where it's not. I mean, like at my kids' school, they don't have an art program at all. So I would go in and teach art classes like once a month, but that's once a month, it's like, I don't have time for more than that. I'm not paid for it, but, people aren't being educated about art and it's always optional in higher grades. It's like art is just kind of this thing that's like over here. Like,
Yeah.
that's a thing.
But it feels like, so I have young kids, right? And so we have little art fun things, to
Yeah.
do, little crafts, and you can draw and color and whatever. So I think that idea is that it's a bit juvenile for people, it's coloring, but okay, well, you have professional artists, yeah, of course, and they're great, whatever. But for me to do it feels very juvenile.
And it's like a thing for kids,
Right, exactly.
not something you carry with you as you grow older.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Unless you take that path.
right, and unless you're very conscious in that path,
Which decreases the appreciation for it because it's just not part of your existence anymore.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you solve for that?
I don't know time, but I feel like the academies have been around for long enough that there should be a solution on the horizon, and I don't see it.
I think there's good there's good online options for people. I think I've started to I've been very hesitant with online because when you go to an academy, you understand the depth of knowledge you're getting. You understand the dedication, just that daily, you're completely consumed by the entire environment of the place. And so that's the pinnacle of being able to make your most economical, saturated progression.
Yes.
And so when you compare anything else, any of the other options, that they're somewhat watered down. So I've been hesitant, but there are a lot of, like you're saying, with like cooking accounts, there's even people that aren't chefs are doing, like, I don't know if you follow, I think it's Meals by Cug or something. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. Anyways, it's just a dude who makes yummy food and makes dirty jokes along the way. And but you also get to see what he's doing.
Right.
And like you can mimic it,
Right.
you can actually cook. Yeah. And there's a lot of, people that are doing that through Patreon. There's Todd Casey and Steve Bauman's got a nice one. And I think maybe Patrick Okerzinski started one. I've started one. Barely, but I'm buying into it more because you can follow along and you can, if you have a little home studio or whatever and you have basic materials, in the same way you can follow along with the cooking, you can kind of follow along with a lot of these artists that are really good, that are breaking it down in simple ways.
A part of me is hesitant with Patreon just because it feels a little gatekeepy. Now, is it really? No, because Patreon is nothing really, especially compared to Art Academy. Like, we spent thousands upon thousands of dollars, right, to get the education that we got. But these cooking tutorials are free and they're being paid by ads, right? And so all you need is clicks and you're getting revenue. And so I feel a little hesitant to be like, Patreon is great. And it's not a bad idea. It's just, it's not as accessible to everyone. And for me, I'm thinking, okay, how do I make this?
What do you mean by that? Not as accessible? Just it's paid?
Yeah, it's paid.
Okay.
Yeah. And we really live in a world where all knowledge is online.
Right.
So it's just a matter of curating it for your own specific needs. And I mean, I get how many software things that are just free for the public and great. Now it's mine. Fantastic.
Right.
And you can donate if you want, but you don't have to. And I'm kind of feeling like that's the direction of education. And I feel like it should be art education in general, where it's free. And the thing that's keeping you afloat is the ad revenue. And so you're making very compelling content that people are very interested in. And that's your job, basically, upon also being an artist.
So I see what you're saying. I have a few questions about that because and this goes back to like different ways of making money as an artist, right? Okay, so we kind of mentioned that subject and then didn't talk about it at all. But we can kind of hit on it as we go. But, one of the ways that a lot of artists make money, especially those that have studied in an academy who maybe they did some student teaching or something there, and they experienced a really beautiful way that teachers broke down information so they can kind of like do that for other students. It's a really nice self-perpetuating system of passing on knowledge. But when you come out and you start, calling yourself a pro and making paintings you want to sell, how do you pay the bills while you do that?
Right.
Well, a lot of people will teach. If there's not a lot of teaching jobs out there.
Right.
So if you want to teach at a university, forget it. If you studied in an academy, a lot of the universities, as soon as you say I went to an academy, they want nothing to do with you because they have some weird aversion to academic teaching. And then you also have to have a master's, which is in the art world, mostly, unless you're going to be teaching at a university, not particularly useful thing to get, and it's super expensive.
Right.
And so for all those people, I'm just thinking about all those people with master's degree in art that are going to be upset that I said that.
Well, it's not necessary. You don't need a master's to say, do you like this painting?
Yeah, I mean, it's useful. I'm just thinking
Yeah.
that most
Probably
master's
useful
programs aren't
in a lot of
necessarily
ways.
giving you a ton more skills.
Right.
But I think that teaching is an option, and we start these Patreons particularly because we have information like, and here's what I've seen when it comes to teaching. People have to value it. It's a weird thing because I know what you're saying. I probably wouldn't pay for a Patreon for some of these people who are making cooking videos because I can go on and get a recipe and follow it.
Right.
But when it comes to teaching, I've found that as soon as I stop charging, people stop coming.
Sure.
And as soon as like I've given scholarships out before, and there was like full scholarships, and then the people that come, sometimes they don't even show up. And so I think there's a weird thing where I'd love to just put it out there. I did put it out there. I had a bunch of videos on my YouTube because I thought, I'm sick of trying to sell these. Let me just put them out. Maybe I'll organically build the YouTube channel because people will see the value in it. And I think some people watched them, but not much.
Right.
And so I've taken all those down, and now I'm putting on my Patreon because they cost a lot to put together. They took a lot of time. There's a lot of good information in there. But also, that's a way for me to like have a more regular income so I can just like figure out painting to painting to painting.
Right.
When you put the pressure on your whole life of paying your bills through the selling of your art, it changes your art. And there's no question that it has a heavy impact on what you paint, how large you paint, all of it. I mean, when I started, I had a choice to make. Do I get a job and try to paint, or do I just go all in? My personality was, I got to go all in. I went that direction. It's been, up and down and a struggle for a long time. Other people like, who's the lady that wrote Big Magic?
Elizabeth Gilbert.
Elizabeth Gilbert.
Yeah.
She talks about how she didn't quit her job until she published her third novel, which was Eat, Pray, Love.
Wow.
And Ray's Gallery talks about Howard Ray's at Ray's Gallery in New York. He talks about how he encourages his artists not to quit their jobs so that they don't have to rely on the sale of paintings. And part of me is like, I don't like that.
Right.
And the other part of me is like, what's the impact on their
attention is divided
art?
like that, it does impact the art too.
It does.
Sure.
I'm in that situation right now. I've got another job, and it's definitely decreased my production this year. And so I'm second guessing that. I'm like, well, maybe that's not worth it,
Right.
But in terms of social media, I was just thinking, like, in order to reach a broad audience, it seems like the art videos or content that does the best is entertainment value. Not necessarily teaching, but things that people enjoy watching just because it's enjoyable to watch, or it's satisfying to watch the way the brush goes against the canvas. I think that has a broader reach because not everyone is saying, I want to paint a lifelike portrait, you know?
For sure.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's more like, I want to be entertained by watching someone do something amazing that I can't do.
Which I feel like is absolutely valid.
Yeah.
And a doorway to understand what is actually behind all of it. I think that's great.
There's this guy on YouTube that my siblings like to watch who cleans rugs. I mean,
100%.
It's just like he's sitting there spraying and then scrubbing, but there's something like, you know, hypnotic almost about it, something meditative about watching this. And art can be that way too, where it can be just enjoyable just to watch the process because it is interesting and it does kind of develop out of nothing. So that can be another avenue for like content on social media. Is this interesting or soothing to watch? Something like that, where it's not necessarily I'm teaching you to do something, but I'm just letting you enter my world, you know?
Well, it hits the algorithms too. Like Dina Brodsky teaches, you know, about social media, and I think she may have talked to Patrick Okrzyński, I don't know. But Patrick does like really interesting videos. I think he maybe talked to Andrei Katerniak about that. And you've seen these guys' social media following just really expand.
100%.
Because they're putting together interesting
entertaining
content.
videos.
And it hits the algorithms. And
there was something I was going to tell you and I forgot. So it doesn't have to be, I think that's part of what the bridge is that it doesn't have to be necessarily just teaching, but it's just exposing.
Sharing.
Exposure
like,
to
look
what
at
this
what
is.
this world is. You can enter it by watching this, and you can be a part of it, and you can understand it.
People are doing great in terms of that, but I don't think they're doing great enough. It's not
to push it over to like you should buy this too.
Right. And also this is actually supporting me and I'm able to pay my bills every single month because of this.
That's hard.
well, that goes into another side of this whole thing, which is the limitations we put on ourselves. I mean, when you start out as an artist, there's the obvious. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but I remember the first time I said I'm going to the studio. And I knew it was just a room that I had paintings in. I remember, you know, introducing myself as an artist and saying I sell in a gallery, that the imposter syndrome of that.
Yeah, there's like a mental shift that takes place.
Yeah. And then, you know, you live it long enough and it just becomes your thing and it's comfortable. But there's that. But there's also the limitations that say, you know, going to an academy, you have this sense of purity that it's not taught to you. It's just kind of in the ether of the conversation. And you leave and think self-promotion is icky, money is icky, talking about sales and pushing yourself and putting yourself out there is kind of gross. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, you'll hear little people like shit on, you know, people that are doing the self-promotion stuff. And you're like, oh, I don't want them to talk about me like that. But also, it feels weird to me to like, even to say, here's my Patreon, to start a podcast. I started this because I'm having these conversations anyway, but to think that people like would be interested or I would think they would, but that's because I think it's interesting. But then to promote yourself and, you know, put yourself work out there and then say, hey, come study with me. I'm worth your time and money. And I think those are self-limitations we put on ourselves.
Yeah, the self-promotion is hard.
When we're, you know, trying to be artists, that in terms of trying to make money, in terms of trying to continue, those self-limitations can be very, very difficult to overcome. And they have been for me. I was super hesitant to get on Instagram. I was really hesitant to make any sort of videos. I was on and on and on. And these walls have slowly broken down. And I look back and I just think how stupid to, like, I'm doing stuff to share. Why am I hesitant to share it? People can't buy stuff they don't know exists. They can't learn from information you don't offer them. They can't, you know, like we're self-sabotaging in that way. In that we're so hesitant to put ourselves out there.
So we're doing the Zion paint painting retreat in October. And so I've been in charge
October 5th to the 11th.
Yes, please come, please. It's going to be amazing.
So fun.
So I've been in charge of the social media for that, right? And so I started an Instagram account specifically for that event. And you can see that I put a lot more time and effort and thought into those posts than I have in my own.
Right.
I don't really feel comfortable promoting myself that way. And I don't really know how to promote myself that way, but I've made reels that have gone, they've gotten some good attention, and I'm like, okay, so I have it in me. I just can't quite
Do it
seem
for
to
yourself.
do it for me.
You've been doing an amazing job with that.
Thank you.
I love
And
It's
then
been fun.
Your inner dialogue says, well, that got a play. I mean, my inner dialogue says, well, that got a lot of play because it's their work. You're like, if I did that for somebody else, well, of course everybody likes their work,
Right.
but they're not going to like. And then if yours doesn't get a lot of attention, then you blame yourself. It's because nobody cares about my work. And there's this constant voice that's
100%.
undermining our confidence.
Yeah.
I think it's a really hard thing because I think part of what lends itself to that feeling is we kind of expect the galleries to do that, right? It
didn't used to be part of our job. Now it's like all
it
on
used
you.
to be
Right.
mainly the job of the gallery to tell people about you, to promote you, to be that voice. Like it always sounds better. I thought it always sounds better if somebody else says how good you are.
Well, it does
than
give
if
you
say
some
how good you are.
credibility. I mean, I think there still is that component to it where if somebody sees, oh, they're selling with Arcadia, oh, they must be good. Like there is kind of that avenue where there are a lot of collectors who need to see that sort of credential to be interested in your work.
Yeah.
But also I've seen people shout themselves to the rooftops. And I remember thinking when I first saw that, like, nobody's going to believe it if you say it about yourself. And then the reality is that the only thing people remember isn't where it came from. They just remember this guy's good. You know what I'm saying?
Interesting.
I think what we need to do is run each other's social media accounts.
That should be a thing. We'll have like takeovers. Like taking over Ryan's social media this week. We'll get a lot of quotes and poems.
Yeah, I want Dina Brodsky to take over mine. She's
Seriously.
Yeah, I wonder how much that would cost.
Yeah, how much can we rent her for?
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of people that do that as a profession now, but you still have to provide them with all the content.
That's the problem. Like whenever I make content in my studio, it's like the lighting isn't good or my camera's not good or something. I'm like, nothing looks good. I don't know. But it's this whole like thing that you have to learn. It's like you need a university course on just developing social media and figuring it all out.
It's a lot. And it's always changing.
Yeah. It's never the same week to week because I'll have something that does really well. And then the next time 27 people see it or something. I'm like, oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. And at some point you have to actually paint.
Right. Like sometimes you have to actually do the work,
Right.
I don't know.
Well, that plays to another part of the conversation, which is when you're starting out, being clear about your priorities. Because I know artists that are very adamant about making money and that they have. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I think that I wish I would have prioritized money a little earlier, just because I've avoided a lot of things that probably would have given me a little bit more solid collector base. But I think that if you're saying I'm going to do this and I have to make a living at it, and you're saying definitely like the living part is very, very important, then you're going to, the decision making on how to accomplish these goals shifts towards making those goals possible.
Yeah, and catering your work to the sales.
And then spending a good amount of your time marketing, a good amount of your time reaching out to galleries, a good amount of your time
interacting with
promoting
collectors
and traveling and going,
showing
setting up
places.
shows. And so it's important to know when you're starting out that you have to be very clear about what it is that you want to accomplish. And if you're just saying, I want to be the best painter I can be, well, then more of your time's going to be spent in the studio. It's not going to be spent on social media. It's not going to be spent making TikTok videos. So there's a give and take to all of it. And it's important to figure out what it is that's your true motivation. And don't feel bad about your true motivation. Just go for it. If you accomplish your goal, whatever that goal is, more power to you. And if you can do it in a creative field, then awesome. But you can spend a lot of time, as I have, floundering back and forth and getting upset. I've had times where I'll get upset that I'm not getting more attention, and then I look at it and say, well, why would I not get more attention if I'm not even out seeking it? If I'm not like doing anything to get it, I make a painting and put it against the wall. Maybe I post it on Instagram.
Right.
Of course, nobody's going to care.
Right.
I'm not doing anything to make them care. And so I think, I've noticed that I get in my way quite a bit. I get in my own way quite a bit. Another thing to think about, I was thinking about this the other day, I think I was talking to you or my wife or something, I can't remember. And it was that nothing is guaranteed. When you get into this field of, a creative field, you have to know that nothing is guaranteed and nothing is really deserved. That no one has to care about what you do.
Right.
That you can put all of your time and energy into this thing and no one needs it. No one has to care about it. No one has to buy it. And you have to find a certain satisfaction in doing it that is outside of those parameters. The sales can't validate you. The accolades can't validate you. Winning or not winning awards can't validate you. There has to be something else because you could work.
It's reminding me of quotes.
I've kind of been looking at these while tuning him out.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Ryan. I have a good quote that goes along with that.
Go.
Okay. This one is, the amateur allows his worth and identity to be defined by others. The amateur craves third-party validation. The amateur is tyrannized by his imagined conception of what is expected of him. He is imprisoned by what he believes he ought to think, how he ought to look, what he ought to do, and who he ought to be. This book is Stephen Pressfield. It's really good. It's going pro, but he's talking about the mind shift that takes place between being an amateur and being like a professional mindset. It doesn't mean like being a professional doesn't mean I spend all my time doing this. Being professional is the way you approach your work. So he says the sure sign of an amateur is he has a million plans and they all start tomorrow. I'm like, oh, that's really good.
Wow.
But yeah, this is a fantastic book. But it was just reminding me of what you were saying, because if you're looking for your artistic motivation to come from outside sources, you're not going to find it. Or if you do, it's not authentic to who you are and what your calling as an artist is,
Well, yeah, that's true. But there's also a reality where you are getting feedback in a certain way. If you enter show after show after show and you get denied and denied and denied, you're gonna look inward. You're gonna blame yourself. You're gonna wonder why this is happening. You're going to try to assess your work, and oftentimes you can, you'll take a look at those same shows and you think, oh, there's work that got in or won awards that isn't nearly as good as mine. And you have to remember that good isn't a word in the art world. There is no standard. There's no good, better, best. There's no, standard by which things can be judged. It's all subjective.
Individual preference.
Right. And and I understand that. I remember one time in this school, we were looking at, something, Portrait Society finalists or something. And I was thinking, because we're all together every day, we're having these conversations every day, let's take the 20 finalists, however many there were, and let's judge them individually and say 1 to 20.
Oh, I remember this. We think? Yeah, that's right.
And I was certain that we were going to get most of them probably the same. And even in that sort of closed society that we had, we were all wildly different. Wildly different. And so, even with people that have very similar taste or very similar education, you're going to choose. You like different things. And so, I think mentally that's very difficult, because if you go an extended period of time where you're not getting recognition and other people are, and you can't seem to, like, for me, it's very difficult because in my mind, I live in a false world of meritocracy. And I know that it's a false world, and I can't get away from it. And so I have a very strong inner dialogue that undermines my confidence when I don't get any recognition for paintings. I feel like, oh, this is my best work. If nobody cares about that, then what am I doing?
Right.
And so I think, understanding these are real difficulties that you may have coming up if you choose this field, is that like sometimes recognition comes and sometimes it doesn't. And neither is deserved, neither is warranted, and neither is guaranteed. And so you just cross your fingers and hope for the best, do your best work, and somehow you have to live with the results. And I don't know, I don't have a good answer for how do you keep going in the face of that kind of obsolescence. How do you do that? Because I've seen it, and it can be incredibly discouraging. I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's just real.
Good luck.
It's
Yeah, I mean,
you have
there's
to
like
understand that going in.
there's like an
Nothing's
idealistic way to view it, which some of this is pointing towards that, where it's like, well, in an ideal world, I wouldn't have to worry about, like, if I'm just true to myself and I just create my best work, it will find an audience, like you said earlier. It's not necessarily the case, and maybe there are, hard realizations along the way, like, maybe I do need some other, avenue or something. But I think at the core of it, if you do follow your own personal voice, your work will be more interesting than if you are trying to make your work for this judge, for this show, like what would, or try to guess what people might like.
Or chasing what someone else has done.
Yeah, or imitating someone else's style.
Yeah.
I think the art that really does catapult, even if it's not, technically the best out there in terms of craft, it's because you see the person's, vulnerability, their voice coming through it, and that makes it more interesting.
Deeper, for sure.
Yeah.
A lot deeper to actually experience.
Yeah, I mean, there's the what's his name? What's his name? He just came out with a book. The music producer, Rick Rubin. He just came out with. It's a great book on like creativity and whatever. And he's on a lot of podcasts recently, and there's the same sort of him talking about this. The most pure way of being an artist is just make for yourself, right? This is a theme that's in several books and several philosophy books, where you have to make it the way that you want it, and that's the purest form of creativity. You have to not care if it's going to be successful. You have to just make it the way that you feel like it needs to be made, and that's true. And it's a very nice soundbite. But the other side of that is, and this is a difficult balance, you're doing something to communicate.
Right.
And so you do have to pay attention to the audience.
Right.
I have a feedback that I get oftentimes from galleries is, we love your work, we'll take whatever you want to send us, and then we'll let the buyers decide, right? We'll let the audience decide. Again, that's a very passive way that I hate, but because the value of art is all perception, and if you can control that perception, I feel like you can control the value, and that's not a mystery on how to do it. The contemporary world's been doing it for decades, but there is a truth to it that says people are going to respond how they're going to respond, and you can't really control that. Even masterworks. I mean, people hate Michael Jordan. People hate Bob Dylan's music. People hate Bouguereau, and that's insane to me, but it's real.
Right.
And so I think you have to account that for the reality that everybody has different tastes, but also if something's not landing, I guess the most extreme form of that is like comedy, right? If you go up on stage and tell a joke and you do that in 20 cities and nobody laughs in those 20 cities, you maybe scrap that joke.
Probably gonna
You
cut
do
it,
have to, somewhat adjust if you want to sell your work.
Yeah, so that's a very difficult balance. It has been for me, especially because it's all tied up in money and paying bills and whatever. But there's, on the one side, you don't want the audience to decide what you paint. You don't want the judges to decide what you paint.
Yeah.
But you also have to pay attention to what the audience is responding to.
Right.
And that's dangerous. It's such a dangerous thing because if I sell, 2 seascapes, then the gallery wants 4 more seascapes.
Right.
And maybe I don't want to paint more seascapes. And so it's been very difficult for me to try and find that. I don't know that I've really found that balance, but it's certainly a part of my inner dialogue constantly is what's getting attention? Why is it getting attention? Can I duplicate that? Do I want to duplicate that? I get all the time that people love my landscapes. I very rarely get that they like my figures. Well, I love painting figures. I love painting figures and landscapes, and inevitably they get far less attention. I could tell you all the reasons why I think that is, but at the same time, I realize, like, if they were selling like crazy, I'd give you different reasons for why they were successful. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you can always look in retrospect and give reasons why something worked or didn't work, but it doesn't mean you actually know why and you can duplicate it, like
Right.
I think I always think about these motivational speakers or the people who are really successful that going, like Rick Rubin, right? Okay, he doesn't know anything about music mixing. He doesn't know anything about like the technical side of that. And yet every major musician has had him produce their record. So here you have a dude that likes to wear sandals, that was in the right place in New York at the right time,
Right.
who loves music,
Right.
who met the right people, who then gave some good feedback,
Right.
and he became Rick Rubin, right? Is he good? Does he have a good ear? Yeah. Does he have good taste? Sure. Does he have any special skills that would make him as successful as he is? Not necessarily. I mean, you could look back and say, here's why Rick Rubin succeeded, but what if he was the dude that was the same guy that happened to live in Oklahoma,
Right.
that happened to have the exact same skill set, the exact same love for music, that was working at a steel mill his whole life, right? You'd say, look at all the reasons why he didn't succeed in music. Well, he never learned how to mix. He never blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think you have to be careful when listening to that kind of advice because you're hearing it from the people who made it. And the reasons they made it aren't necessarily because of their skill set. It isn't necessarily because of their work ethic. A lot of people work their ass off. And don't find that kind of success.
Yeah.
A lot of people are incredibly talented and have a great work ethic and have a unique style and have a unique voice, and you never hear about them.
Right.
And I mean, my great fear is that that's going to be me forever. But am I willing to keep doing it in the face of that? And so far, yes. And I don't know why. Every time I go to Costco, I think about how good I'd be at collecting carts. I really think that's my calling.
I think
And
that
You
you
could always
would
give it a
own
try.
that.
I
Yeah.
mean, why not?
I just really like collecting carts.
So rich people say use your spare time, 10 minutes a day, hour a day, whatever, to learn a new skill, right? You need to learn how to collect carts.
I don't need to learn how to collect carts. I need
You
to
got
start
it?
teaching.
Okay. Okay. You need to start.
Amazing at it. I should start a Patreon.
There you go.
This
This is how it's done. Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably some strategy to it. I haven't ever thought about that.
So part of it, part of the luck is definitely where you are. Now, social media has kind of closed that gap a little bit, right? Because obviously a lot of people can see all of what
Right.
you're doing, but being able to make personal connections with someone, I mean, it's not as, is that an earthquake?
No, it's
Oh, sorry, that was the train. Sorry.
The train tracks.
He
Are about
did
a
tell me
quarter
that.
mile
Yeah,
away.
sorry.
So yeah,
I'm so
all
sorry.
the paintings jiggle every couple hours or
Okay,
whatever.
that's fine.
No earthquakes.
Anyway, so making personal connections with someone is really important. And that's harder to do online. So being in a place where there are potential connections to catapult your career is a huge plus.
Yeah.
And we are definitely not in a place where that's really an option. I mean, there are outlets, I guess, but being able to access those outlets are few and far between.
There's not great museums. There's not
Right.
great cultural events.
Right.
The collecting audience. There's actually a pretty robust collecting audience in Utah, but they tend to be a lot more frugal, and they tend to show their non-frugality outside of the state. They'll go buy art outside of the state
Right.
at galleries, but
Right.
yeah, there's not a lot of there's a lot of great artists in Utah. There's just not a lot of events or you know
Right.
things that you can gather. There's obviously not conferences and that sort of thing that go through other states, but those are always important to go to. Unfortunately, some of them are going online after COVID,
Right.
which is not the same. But the Plein Air Convention was great. Portrait Society is always a great event. They had the Figure Art Convention. I don't know if they'll bring that back. I know oil paint. I've never been to an Oil Painters of America thing, but I've heard that they're nice. Yeah, but again, all of that requires travel and time and
and
money
and
Yeah.
it's everything's an investment. And this is one of the things I was talking to my wife about is every decision I make, and this is one of my ongoing frustrations, and it just kind of came to like this moment of clarity the other day. Every single decision I make has zero guarantee behind it. If I choose to take some time off and make some videos, no one has to tune into that. No one has to sign up for my Patreon.
Right.
If I take time off to, say, do some religious work because, the LDS Church might buy it, there's no guarantee that they're going to take that. If I choose to do, more landscapes because the galleries are asking for that, there's no reason that they're going to sell. If I choose, like we talk about ideas all the time, even, doing the school or, workshops that we've put on or whatever. Well, everything takes time.
Right.
And when you're in this field, there's a distinct uncomfortableness to every decision you make because there's no paycheck at the end.
Yeah,
Do you know what I'm saying?
you don't clock in and say, okay, I get my X amount per hour, which is like every other job, It's
Right.
like, I show up, I do my work,
Yep.
I get paid. This is like complete opposite.
Yeah, my wife and I were talking, and she's giving me ideas. She's like, "Well, why don't you put more stuff on your Patreon?" Or I don't remember what she. I wasn't listening. I'm just kidding. You've given me ideas. You've given me ideas. We've known each other a long time,
Right.
so we've thrown ideas at each other all
Right.
for years. And a lot of times, I remember saying things and. The response from the people giving the ideas is like, why don't you ever listen to me? Like, what? And it's not, or you don't think my ideas are good. And it's not that. I realized that the reason is because it's not that it's not a good idea. I just don't know if it'll work. Do you know what I'm saying?
There's no
Of course
certainty
it's a good
behind it.
idea.
Yeah.
Right.
But if I do this, I don't have time for this. And if I, vice versa.
Right.
And none of them are guaranteed. And I just realized the other day, I think that's why I'm so anxious all the
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
because
It's a very uncertain
nothing
existence.
I do
Yeah.
is guaranteed. And I find that there's a certain amount of freedom in what we do, which is a beautiful thing. There's a certain amount of obvious creative outlet and personal growth and time you really get to spend in self-development. But the flip side to that is everything's a gamble. And that is, after 20 years for me,
exhausting.
that is exhausting. Yeah. I'm looking at, my wife just got a job, so she's getting this regular paycheck, and I'm just like salivating at that. Like, that looks so. She just
Isn't that nice every Friday?
She
or
just
something?
does whatever she's supposed to do.
Yeah.
They tell her what to do. She does it, and then they pay her for it.
It's like such a
How
weird
nice
idea,
is that?
right?
Yeah.
There's a reason why there aren't a whole lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
And a whole lot more workers.
Yeah.
It's a level of stress you really have to kind of calibrate yourself to. And and it's up and down. And so it's, there's a constant anxiety that underlies everything, because you could make the best show ever and no one could show up.
Right. It's true.
Like, I remember they did a show I was just talking to you about in Las Vegas one year. Massive show. I mean, you had huge names there: Daniel Green and Joseph McGurl and William Davis and Cesar Santos and who else? It was massive. Alexi Steele and Tony Pro were there. Who else? There's a bunch of people.
Ryan Brown was there.
Yeah.
Ryan S. Brown.
Yeah. They rented out the ballroom at the Wynn, I think it was. I mean, the Eagles had played there the week before.
Wow.
And nobody came. I did a demo on stage for 2 people, one of them being my wife. It was like
That's
there
crazy.
was
In the middle of Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. It was around Christmas time. I think they were expecting a lot of like Chinese collectors to be there, and because they don't celebrate Christmas, and they're kind of banking on that. They spent a ton of money on it, and nobody showed. There were more security guards. There was like 8 security guards to every person there.
Wow.
And it was a whole weekend, and that happens.
That's sad.
It does.
Why? You could, again, looking in retrospect, you could try to figure out why. But if 40,000 people showed up, you'd have different reasons for why that happened.
Right.
And I mean, there were millions of dollars of paintings in there, and some of the world's best artists, and nothing.
Did they advertise?
They did. They
Yeah?
did. They spent a ton of money on advertising.
Bad timing. Probably, but
I don't know, but I
never
think
know
that
what's gonna
is
happen.
that is the anxiety of doing what we do, and again, I don't have an answer for it, but for anyone that's trying to get business advice, what's the summation here? Don't do this. I don't know.
I don't know.
Watch people do it online. I think
Yeah.
Get really great at making interesting videos. I hope this hasn't been negative or
it's cautionary, I think, more than anything.
Yeah.
I don't think that we've been disparaging. It's just like these are things that
These are the realities.
This is absolutely the reality, and you need to be able to address these issues if you decide to go this path. Oh, clearly, we have not done a good job of that. But
I mean,
we're trying.
We've all had some successes, and
Sure.
I know won awards and been in shows and made sales and gotten commissions, and it's not like nothing good has happened to us.
Absolutely.
It's just there's an unsurety to it, and there's no guarantee.
The struggle is always underneath the surface. With
Yeah.
every win, there's always a ooh.
Right.
But I can't count on it again.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like oh, it happened. Like how long is it
Right.
going to be till it happens again?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a bittersweet sort of yeah, and even that doesn't happen for everybody. Some people win and win and win, and good for them.
Good for them.
True.
Seriously.
Yeah, I think that there's I don't really have any advice in terms of business, except for be really clear about your priorities, and then have a good sounding board, have a good group of people around you that you love and that love you, because you're going to have struggles. You're going to share those struggles. There's going to be a familiarity. We all have them. And I think that it's very hard to do this in a closed off system where you're just doing it by yourself. I think having a good solid group of people that are supportive.
Yeah. Start that union.
That's right.
Yeah, it's true though that the average public doesn't necessarily face the same sort of difficulties in their line of work. It's kind of a unique thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes it difficult. I think that's why you really need to associate with other artists, whether they be musicians or writers or even chefs, any sort of entrepreneurial mindset. I think there's a familiarity with what you're going through that you're going to need somebody to complain to.
And I think most artists don't sign up for this thinking, I want to be a businessman. It's totally opposite of my personality. I do not like
me
that
too.
Aspect of
it.
It's
Going to school in Florence Academy, I remember that we had a lecture one night about the business side of it.
Yeah, and you're like,
and I was in my first year, I'm just working on my little bargs, and here I am talking. That's like years ahead. I don't have to worry about it. It's fine.
I'll just get into a gallery. They'll take care of it.
And clearly, I didn't take enough notes.
Even just like the taxes and everything is like, this is complicated for somebody who
super
doesn't get a
W-2.
Yeah.
And hiring someone is expensive. And it's a whole thing where you have to completely just kind of immerse yourself into the business side of it.
And there's no one to teach you.
Yeah.
You don't learn it anywhere. Even if you go get a master's degree, they're not,
they're not teaching you
how to be a businessman.
Right. Yeah. Which I know is part of your business plan in the long term for the big school, should it ever get picked up, is have business classes for students, because it really is so neglected within art academies and art schools and whatever. That's partly why we're here. We could say it is, and maybe it is, and maybe it isn't, but being able to focus on that in school rather than while you're in the field.
Just figuring it out as you go.
I still don't know if I'm doing my taxes right. I hope I am, and I don't get
I know.
the IRS after me. But who knows?
I think I'm not making enough money at this point for them to really care that much.
There's also how do you take advantage of what you have? Because say from a business standpoint, I'm growing a collection. I trade with other artists. I buy art here and there. And how can I use that to my benefit? Can I create a trust? Can I donate the painting to the trust and get a huge tax write-off if I need it every year? Can I rent it back to my home studio and write that off? There's so many ways that you can, and in tax incentives and ways that you can go about it within the art field. We know nothing about that kind of stuff.
But that's the thing, is it's all you're learning about this now, but if you had known about it 10, 20 years ago, if you had a business person telling you, hey, you can do this and this is how.
Yeah.
What an advantage.
I think that plays to a lot of the self-limitations we put on ourselves, that part of the conversation, and that there's two parts of this. So I'll just mention the two parts so we can try to talk about both of them. One is the limitations of business, right? There's really no avenue to learn that. The other is the limitations we put on ourselves artistically, in terms of maybe methods that we use, how we make our art. A big conversation right now, or when we were in the academy, it was all, paint from life. Photographs were kind of crapped on. Now I think that's loosening up a little bit. More people realize the practicality of using photographs. And now you have AI, which is proving to be a really, really cool tool that immediately there's massive backlash against.
I know. Yeah, that's the thing. You're going to get so many comments ooh, AI.
Don't say that word.
It's almost a dirty word at this
point. But it all plays to self-imposed limitations.
Yes.
And I think that some limitations are kind of thrust on us because there's no outlet, like the not learning about business.
Yeah.
And some are self-imposed, which is, I can't use photographs.
I have to be a purist about whatever it is I started out doing.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it is a good idea for anybody getting into this to, understand basic bookkeeping, understand, basic social media, understand that it's never too early to start sharing your artistic journey. That there's no point at which you turn pro. That if you're doing something creative, you should share it, because
Right.
people want to watch you get better. They enjoy, seeing the journey and the effort that goes into it. And I think that's one of the dangers with all the frustrations we've talked about and all the anxiety within this. The last thing you need to do is, put a bunch of limitations on
afraid.
yourself. Yeah.
Act out of fear. You just have to act out of, faith in yourself and faith in what you can accomplish.
That's tough, man.
It is
That's
hard.
so
It's really
tough.
hard. But if you're acting out of fear, it's going to come through.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. It is.
And that goes back to, again, like, have a great group around you.
Yeah.
Try
Right.
to curate
Right.
a group where, talk to business people and talk to musicians and talk to
Yeah.
people that have done it for a while, because they're going to know little things about, like, you got to keep track of your inventory of art. You have to figure out where it's at.
Yeah.
You have to remember which galleries it's in.
Yeah.
You have to understand the cost of framing. You have to understand the cost of shipping. Where can you get custom boxes, and where's the cheapest place you can ship, and what are shipping times, and what are all the opportunities for scholarships or exhibitions or competitions, or you're not
Yep.
going to know all of that
Right.
immediately. So you need to kind of reach out. And then one of the nice things about, and I've said this forever, one of the nice things about the art world is that almost everybody I've ever met, no matter where they're at in their career, has been incredibly humble and accessible. It's rare that I reach out to an artist, like cold call, and I don't get a response. I remember Scott Tallman Powers. I'd never met him, but I've always loved his work. I was working on a big, and he's a big artist, and I was working on a painting I was having a hard time with, and out of the blue, I'm like, all right, Scott Tallman Powers.
Yeah. He's like the nicest person
And
ever.
I sent him some images. I didn't know what I'd get back. And he took it into Photoshop. He did all this stuff to it, manipulate. He's like, well, I think maybe this and that.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
amazing.
Super generous.
Yeah.
Super generous.
Yeah.
And,
That's awesome.
and we've gotten to know each other a little bit since then. But a lot of artists are like that.
Yeah.
And I think, you can feel comfortable reaching out to artists that may feel inaccessible, that you might have a perception that they're really big or whatever. Most of them are very generous and willing to give advice or help or whatever. And building that community around you is really important, because there's people with more experience than you. They can say it's important to, keep good books. It's important to figure out some basic taxes. It's important to keep a good inventory of your work. It's important to understand all of these, different things.
Photoshop,
But also,
by the way, is a lot bigger in my day-to-day than I thought it would be.
Photoshop. Oh, yeah.
Photoshop.
Yeah.
I wish I knew it
I like
better.
Procreate. It's more user friendly.
I don't know anything about that, but I can work my way around Photoshop.
Yeah.
well, I remember at the Hudson River School, actually this is probably the second year that they had it in 2008. I remember there being a big conversation about the use of photography. And, I think Jacob Collins gave a speech. Not a speech, but he was kind of leading the conversation. And, he's somebody that is very adamant about working from life, and it works for him. It's, great for him. I think, but he was sharing his thoughts on why he doesn't use photography. And then, he says, does anybody want photography? Everybody use photography. And I'm like this little hand going up in the back, like, I think it's great. I think as long as you know the strengths and weaknesses, and I, gave a little spiel. And then, in, just dead silence, I think Will St. John followed with a 30-minute beautifully eloquent reason why he didn't use photography. They all had great reasons for them.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
But it spills over into, maybe students picking that up and feeling like, well, I can't.
Right.
And I think that, you have to be willing. I'm like, this is hard.
Yeah.
Making it harder is insane. I've heard the argument. I've only heard one artist ever say this, and I can't imagine any great artist from the past ever saying this. But one artist was talking about making it more difficult in the sense that it's like resistance training in the in the gym. That if you make it more difficult for yourself, if you put these restrictions on yourself, then you're going to get stronger. And I can't imagine Bugaro being like, I wish this were harder. You know what I'm saying? Like, what we do is so difficult as it is, and making progress and getting better is so difficult. I think you have to be willing to use any tool that you feel like would help.
So,
And the tools, you have to understand the strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
Or otherwise you become a slave to the tool.
Right.
Right? That's anything. You could become a slave to quinacridone on red if that was like the only thing you knew how to use. You know what I'm saying? It's any tool that you have to be able to understand its strengths and weaknesses and be in control of it.
I assume we're going to do a podcast solely on like photography, AI, things like that.
This is it.
Okay, so we're going all in?
Let's do it.
Okay.
I do think this is a big part of the conversation about the business of art, is the self-imposed limitations, and tools are a big part of that for representational artists.
100%. So I'm going to put it out there in the world that I do use AI. I do. I do it in a very strategic way, I feel. I'm not saying that I put in a prompt and I say, yep, that's my painting right there. I did that because I put it in the computer. That's not it at all. I'm still having to go through all of the steps of actually composing and figuring out and
compiling.
And getting all the resources and figuring out what's not quite working and why it doesn't quite work. And I need to research, how to make it work. And, but the idea, it's an idea generator, right?
Yeah.
And the idea is there and it's solid. And I'm like, okay, I get to use this when I didn't have the resources before to get the model, get the setup, get the location, get the costumes, get everything. I mean, my studio alone is far too small to be able to have a model in there at all. And so to be able to do all of these things just right there immediately is a huge benefit for me.
Yeah, me too. I'm working on a commission of a biblical scene.
Yeah.
And it's like, where am I going to find horses and chariots?
It's a huge
I could
ask.
go out and find somebody who has horses and set up but if I can generate that, like, that's much more practical.
And they're never perfect. And the benefit you have is you've all worked from life quite a bit.
Right.
And so there's an understanding, there's a foundation of knowledge that says, that gives you a lot more clarity in terms of what it's not giving you, right? We've seen artists that are using AI and their painting starts and stops with AI.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? It's immediately. And to say, like you say, I use AI.
Obvious.
Not really. I mean, it's such a new tool. It's like barely came out like a couple of months ago.
Right.
So,
and how many people are really like masterful at it? And it's constantly changing.
It's far from perfect.
Right.
It's far from, and I think one of the big conversations against AI is basically recreating other people's art and then making money off of their style or whatever.
Using copyrighted material.
That's not what we're talking about.
No, not at all. Not at all.
We're saying we're talking about the use of AI in a similar way as the use of photography for when the daguerreotypes came out.
And compiling and composing on your own.
Yeah, I think when photography first came out, you saw a big jump in the naturalist painters' ability to compose complex
100%
images, and it served as like this form of information that they were able to inform their paintings a little bit easier, faster. They were able to make the paintings faster. They were able to make them more complex, more believable.
The drawing gets better.
Right.
Yeah, certain things.
Yeah, I think, and I think I've used AI. With anything like Photoshop or whatever, I just can't be bothered to figure it out really.
Right. It's pretty surface level.
Which I hate about myself. I wish I knew these. I know people that use it like wizards, and I wish I had that skill set because I know how much it would assist me. But even in the small amount of, I mean, I've generated thousands of images. I'm not saying I haven't like played around with it or I'm just tinkering with it, but I don't know it. I don't know how to then take it into another AI program. I don't know how to like then take it into Procreate or Photoshop and start manipulating.
There's a whole thing.
So, but it's immediately something that I think is opening up a lot of opportunities to visualize complex scenes. It's opening up opportunities to overcome some limitations that we have, like you said, whether we have a small studio or we have a limited budget for models or whether we
have a crazy scene we're trying to generate.
We can't like make all the costumes or rent them or like can't go to like fly to have France and have like a castle background or whatever it is that we're trying to make.
Or a completely fantastical background that I can't really quite get into into view, and then that's what it is, that's what I've been trying to figure out,
or that leans toward it, and kind of take pieces of this and
it's hugely
it
beneficial.
with my imagination.
The backlash against it, I mean, I get it to a point, but at the same time I'm like, but there's so much here that you're not utilizing. It's far beyond what you think it is, I feel. But
the backlash also comes
opinions
from like the backlash for photography, and I understand it, is when you see a painting done for photography that looks like photography, right? Like you 100%. haven't done anything to overcome that tool. You've just recreated it. And so if you're painting from life a lot and you understand how to create a painting that has more life in it because you don't have the mechanics of the photography tool, well, of course you would have an argument against photography. But that just means that if you are going to use it, you have to understand how to overcome it. And it's the same with AI. We've already seen people that are doing paintings that have like the weird lengthened necks or weird hands.
It's so obvious. If you know what you're looking at, you can definitely
you can point it out immediately.
Or there's like a look to maybe the models that's like, I've looked at enough AI where that's obvious, right?
Right.
Well, what you don't want to see is that somebody's it feels either lazy, it feels uncreative, it feels maybe like a lack of expertise. And that's the argument. That's what you want to not see.
Lack of effort, honestly. Just straight up a lack of effort of any thought of what it is that you're actually painting. It's like, that's an image. Okay, I'll go at it.
That's the thing that would upset people. That's the thing that I could say, like people getting really annoyed at the use of the tool is the tool's really in control here. But you're always going to have that. Who cares? Yeah. For the artists that want to do that, like there's room for everything, and who cares? Sometimes like that's their best work, right? And so great, you've elevated your game because of this tool. You're not fine.
Right.
But I don't think it's enough to make the argument against using the tool altogether. I just see too much benefit and too much potential in what it can open up creatively for artists.
And it's not going away.
No. It's just going to get better.
Absolutely.
I also don't think it's going to replace. I think
agree.
I've heard that argument as well, that like cinema was going to replace still painting and
photography was going to replace painting.
Right. Auto-tune was going to replace
singers.
Singers. Yeah. I don't think so. I think it'll, there's people that are making money off of art. Off of AI generated art. Yeah. There's some people doing amazing stuff awesome. I want to see cool stuff. So however you made it, that's awesome. I want to see it.
You see that cool stuff and it just gives you more ideas. Yeah. Right? So it's an idea generator.
Sorry. Stop.
And so if you use it as that, this is a starting point of something that I can create into something truly mine and unique and incredible and artwork, right? Yeah. Then I have no problem using it. Yeah. I really don't. And the backlash against it, I see it every day on my feed, and I'm like, okay, do you? That's fine. And here I am proclaiming that I am an AI user, and that's fine. but
it's
I don't
not,
care.
When you say you're an AI user, you're not. I feel like some people might take that and like, oh, that's how she makes her art. No. That's like saying I'm a Rosemary brush user. I use Treckel. I use Raymar panels.
Yeah.
I use
Or
Photoshop.
I'm a Photoshop artist.
Yeah,
Right.
When you make your paintings after you compile them in Photoshop.
Right.
Yeah, you're not a Photoshop artist. You're not an AI artist.
Right.
You're somebody who has that tool in
Their tool belt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't feel bad about keeping up with the time and it's constantly changing and progressing and whatever. And I don't feel bad about keeping up with that because I feel like when Instagram dropped, you said there was that hesitancy of, that self-promotion and oh my goodness, and I can't be posting all the time. And it has completely taken over our society and how we function and how we get information and whatever.
Especially for artists, I feel like.
Especially, and how we learn and whatever. And so this is a far more powerful tool that will completely change how we see and think and whatever in terms of certain aspects of our lives, right? Again, it's not going away, and so I don't want to be left behind. I don't want to feel I don't want to feel like I'm just completely oblivious to this world because it's going to be a part of my life, whether I accept it or not. It's going to be there, so I might as well understand it and know how to use it the way that I want to, instead of it controlling.
And maybe you don't. Maybe you try to understand it and choose not to use it. Right. I mean, it's just you can't. It's like avoiding Facebook or Instagram, for whatever reason. Right. Initially, you realize like that I just put myself behind.
Right.
Really,
right.
This is here's the benefits of this tool, and here's how I can utilize it. It doesn't matter if everybody embraces it. Do I see value in it? And if I see value in it and potential in it, then why would I avoid it? And I think that's something to be open to with anything, because self-imposed limitations are sometimes you don't even know they're there until years later, and you realize how much time you've wasted. I think the it's not even a question for me. It's not something, but at the same time, it's not something I'm going to go post on Instagram. It's not something I'm going to like.
Well, you're kind of doing it right now.
Right now, you're declaring
it. Like I'm saying it, but also.
You're not going to say this image was.
I'm not going to promote it.
Right.
I also don't say this was painted on this canvas all the time.
I was using these colors when I painted this.
I don't like. Also post here's the 3 or 4 images I used in the making of this painting.
You don't want people to see your reference.
Or it's not really important that they see it either. Like
if they do, it
matter.
Changes the way they view what they're looking at. So.
Yeah, they'll judge it against that.
Right.
At the end, it's the final product.
It's the actual piece of art that really.
And ideally,
matters.
I think the people that it's the same as photography. The people that are making interesting art that's really unique, that's really fulfilling their vision, you don't ask how it was made. You don't ask like what went into it. You don't recognize any of the tools. The tools have never gotten in the way of a great painting. You don't say, well, Jerome hired an architect to do the drawing for that painting, or
good for him. Seriously,
I mean,
take that off your back, man.
I hate painting architecture.
Seriously,
it's interesting to see, photographs that Jerome used in retrospect, but like. Why would he have published those at the time? It doesn't make any sense, and nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Right.
No.
So I think that I'm hesitant from that standpoint of my peers. I'm hesitant to like say, "Hey, here's all the tools I'm using," because I know I have friends that only
there are
work
some
from life.
highly charged feelings about it.
Yeah,
for
sure.
And if I do it well, if I use any of my tools well, then you shouldn't know where it came from. Then you it shouldn't be obvious how I made the painting. The painting should just speak for itself. You should just feel the painting, enjoy the painting, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And that's, with any new tool, there's going to be some learning curves. So I think that I've used AI for maybe 4 or 5 paintings as a sort of
Starting point.
peripheral tool. Yeah. But if you went to my website and looked at the paintings, I mean, it'd be a fun experiment
Which
to
ones?
say like which ones were they?
Can I point them out?
Katie has insider
I know.
knowledge.
I know.
But yeah, I think like you're saying, you learn from that. You
Right.
learn from Instagram. Like, okay,
Right.
that was dumb of me
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
put that limitation on. Now
And it's
you're not going to make that same mistake.
I mean, AI, the way that you can work it, you can really learn composition from it. Straight up. Like, there are some decisions that AI will make that I would never think of. And I think, oh gosh, that's brilliant. Why couldn't I think of that? Well, because I haven't done it before. Okay, but now I get to do it. And now I get to kind of think my way around this. And okay, that's awesome. Where before, okay, I'm just going to be producing the same old that I've been doing. And so I'm pushing myself, I'm pushing what I know, and I'm pushing kind of not only my work, but hopefully all of us can kind of push ourselves into a direction of just stronger work altogether. And so I do find a lot of value in that, that I can learn from it.
Well, that's an important point because, we've talked about this going back for a long time, that if you do want to get into painting more complex paintings, multi-figure narrative, historical maybe, fantasy, whatever it is, there's no school that teaches it anymore. So it used to exist in the 19th century. They would teach composition, and they had the Prix de Rome, and there were outlets for people to really develop the skills of picture making. And now there's really no schools that teach that. So when you think about, like, who would I go to paint a Velázquez like portrait? Meaning like the is it Las Meninas?
Yeah.
Who would I go to
Yeah.
to figure out how to put together a Waterhouse painting?
Right.
Who would I go to that could teach me the elements of all of these sort of storytelling and narrative painting skills? I can't think of anybody who I could go study with. I think that some Russian academies still have that as an element, but I don't speak Russian.
Right. But also, I don't have like 6 months to a year to spend in front of a painting to copy it.
Yeah.
I just don't.
But even if you did,
Right.
it's not like the academy where you're getting daily feedback and somebody's pointing out the things that you're unaware
Yes.
of. You're still only aware of the things that you're aware of, right? And but when you see, like, when you get to spend time with a master painting, you become more and more aware of certain things. You spend time studying it, but the AI has that ability to, like, do things. Like when you said, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah.
I can hear people saying, well, then it's not
well, that's
yours.
Right.
And so you're only able to do that well because the AI did it for you. But you're not just taking it and making a painting dumbly.
Right.
You're taking it and you're saying, you're using it as a
those
teacher.
ideas.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, this isn't a Bouguereau. This isn't a Waterhouse. It's something brand new. And yet it has some elements I've seen in master paintings. And that decision, now if I figure out why it's so much better than something I would have composed, I can more aptly take that and compose it better myself next time, right? And so we don't have, there's no teachers to teach us that. So this ends up, the surprise, and I think it's probably a surprise for you guys as well, is that, like, this is a big teaching tool.
It really
that's
is.
what I've noticed most
really
about
is.
it, because I can set out and try to, like, arrange my composition, or I can generate 20 ideas and consider all the different ones and go, I kind of like how this is triangular and this, it's not like I'm just copying it, but it's showing me kind of like, it's like if you do a master copy, but it generates its own master copy. So it's like a different, it's kind of an interesting
brand new thing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, this is masterful in its arrangement, but I've never seen it before. It's kind of
Right.
an interesting
Yeah, and in
thing to
a context
consider.
that is very specific to what you want. Mm-hmm. And I mean,
Yeah.
where do you get that? You have masterworks that you can copy, and that's great.
Yeah,
but
you
then
can look up
taking
things that are. Who else has
to-
painted this story?
Right.
Like the story that I'm painting over here. I'm not supposed.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to share about it, but it's like there are a lot of horrible paintings of it in existence. So I'm having to piece elements together, but to do that, like that, yeah, it really has been very helpful.
Yeah,
and it's not like
for sure.
I've copied any one image. It's just like, you know, okay, now I want things coming at this angle with this sort of lighting and, you know, that sort of thing. So it's more of a designing tool for me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's what I've recognized in it. I feel like it's immediately making me more aware of certain things.
More intentional, like, oh, what do I really want here?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what have I always wanted that I can now get?
Yeah,
But that
because
didn't-
I can't
I couldn't
hire
before.
a herd of horses running towards me. Like, where am I going to find that? And how will I get the right shot if they're
Right.
running at me?
Right.
Like, I can't do it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
While also running your business of art making and being in the
And
studio.
being a parent and
Right,
doing all the
right.
house. You know, I mean, like, there are a zillion things in life. But
Right.
Yeah, I've had ideas that when I lived in Florence, 07, 08, that I remember hiring models,
Yeah.
telling them what to wear, to going around the city, photographing, looking for specific doorways, looking for specific locations. And, you know, I made a couple paintings based on those ideas, but I had the idea. I just couldn't quite find
Recreate it.
the space. I couldn't quite find
Yeah.
the model. I couldn't quite get the costume. And I hold on to those ideas. And now, you know, I'll take some of these old ideas and throw them into an AI. And immediately, even when it was brand new and it was
that's good.
real
Yeah.
quirky, I was like, ooh,
Yeah.
there's
Right.
that's very close to what I was
Yeah.
thinking.
That's almost hitting it.
yeah.
Which is so, I mean, that's like mind blowing that it can kind of get you the thoughts that you've always kind of been almost there. And
it's
that's
just,
it.
and why didn't I make it, or why did my painting end up
Yeah.
being a little bit more static or uninteresting? It's because I couldn't quite visualize
Right.
that little thing. I couldn't
Right.
quite get that information.
or overcome the limitations of the physical environment
Yeah.
that you were
Yeah.
working in.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you have this
Yeah.
new tool that's like, oh, well, what about this?
Right.
Here's a little nudge. Here's a something to help me visualize it in a more complete manner.
Well, I mean, it's like in the academy, I remember very distinctly, I was working on a still life. I think it was like my first major still life. And I had been working for months on this thing, and I had the composition and I had this idea of what I wanted. And, you know, in my head, it made sense. But on canvas, it just wasn't quite there. And you come in and you're like, well, why don't you get some yellow flowers? Put one here. And of course, of course. And that's kind of what I feel like it's doing. It's just nudging you to, well, why don't you think about this?
Right.
Consider
You know?
this option.
Right. Yeah. And
But you're also nudging it. You're
Right.
also saying,
Right.
what if I add this? Or
Right.
what if I describe this a little differently? Or that's not exactly what I'm doing. Let me reimagine it this way. And yeah, so it's not just
Right.
the thing.
Right.
You're nudging it, and you're nudging yourself, and even describing it differently. You
Yeah.
have to like kind of say, well, what am I really wanting to do
Right.
here?
Right.
And one of the things I've noticed is like, if this takes the shackles off a little bit more, and if that's like, what are we going to be able to create?
Right.
Given a little bit more freedom, taking some of these limitations off. But it's still your imagination. It's your idea. You're prompting it. You're figuring this out. You're figuring out what's not working, and you're reimagining and reimagining and reimagining, and it's very, very interactive.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you're in control.
Yeah.
But you're also a student of it.
Right.
And that's really key.
It's an
right?
interesting
100%.
interaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take
Super
old
interesting.
ones that I had imagined, kind of generated, and look back at them like, okay, that's not quite it. And, you know, and I had thought, okay, well, I can make this painting and I can use these elements from it. But okay, this isn't quite there. And I'll go back and I'll reimagine until I'm getting something that feels, you know, better and that I can actually utilize. And there's some that I'm still not getting, and that's okay, you know. And so I'm not completely reliant on it, but it's something that I'm absolutely going to use. Especially I'm working on a series that is kind of a bit more fantastical, and there's no outlet and no resources for me to get what it is that I'm going for, because this isn't something that's been done before.
Yeah.
You know, and so I have to use the tools at hand in order to create the paintings that I want to create. And this is the paintings that I really want to create. And ultimately that's what it's down to, is right. Like, these are what I want to do. And I don't want my resources to dictate what I create. The business side might, but my resources shouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not something that spits out something, you know, and you're like, oh, there's a good idea.
Right.
I'll paint that.
That's
right?
absolutely not what it
No.
is.
This is your idea.
Not at all.
This is you trying to figure it out and sift through and understand how to refine that idea. And then there's elements to each of these little moments that you can say, I can integrate that, I can integrate that.
And we're in a group online on AI that we can see each other's prompts and what we're coming up with, you know, and having that little feedback and seeing, okay, that's what they're doing to get that. That's interesting. And, ooh, I like this direction, and, you know, whatever. I think that's also really beneficial to see, kind of just check up on what each other's doing and understand what their artwork at the end, you know, where it kind of came from and where it's going and whatever. I think that's really, really cool that we have that little community and resource online. And so you can say, well, that's a really dumb idea, Katie, stop doing that. What are you doing?
Yeah, but I think yes. But if you have a good reason for it,
right?
Like when you
just stop painting, Katie. You need to stop.
Yeah, if you have a really distinct purpose for making a painting, and someone says, "I don't think that's a good idea," and you push back, you push back from a point of, "I like this because I have a reason for this because."
Yeah.
And it's got to be there because blah, blah, blah. Or if you don't have a solid reason for it, then even that exposes the reality that, like, maybe I haven't really thought about the deeper purpose of this.
Yeah.
I think that's valuable. We've always had that, I think.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah, you're an idiot. Stop doing that. And you have to defend yourself. But also, when you say, I don't like that, we've always known that comes from a place of love. Like, the only reason I would say this is because I think maybe you're missing it, or I think it could make it a little bit better.
Right.
And I really give a shit if you're great. You
Right.
know, I really care
Right.
that you get good and that you do your best.
Yeah.
And so there's, you know, it always hurts to be aware that other people don't think you're perfect. But I think when it comes from a place of, like, I really care,
Right.
it's not that hard to hear.
And I feel like in our little group that we have here, we share each other's, you know, paintings in our group chat, and I take that responsibility very seriously. If you're asking for a critique, if you're asking for feedback, I take that very seriously, and I will take the time to really look at that. And I mean, like Scott Tolman Powers gave you that feedback. He takes it very seriously.
Yeah.
That, okay, you are sincere, and I will give you a sincere answer.
Yeah.
And I care about this succeeding.
Yeah. You are not my competition, you're my friend, and I
Right.
want to see you succeed.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well,
On that
that's
note.
probably good.
A nice wrap up to the business of art.
My ass is asleep.
Right? Well, that's why we sat on the hard chair.
That's right, so we
couldn't
could
go
wrap
too
up.
long.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I'll get to hear in the comments about how I dominated and didn't let you guys talk enough.
Yeah, well,
That'll be nice.
There are studies about that, about how women don't speak up in groups. So, you need to bring some men in here.
Do you know any?
Do you know any men that you're friends with?
I don't know. There's just not very many good men painters. There's most of the good painters are women.
That's right.
Oh, man, Ryan.
Yeah. Well, thanks for hanging out and recording this.
Yeah.
Hopefully
for
it's
having us.
somewhat useful for people to hear. And thanks for listening, and we'll come back with a new topic. I would say anyone that wants to, in comments, suggest something, we're open for that. I think we have conversations all the time, so it becomes a little bit repetitive, and I never know what I've talked about and what I haven't talked about. So
That hasn't stopped you
Just
from
talked about
just
it all with
repeating
everybody.
everything.
So yeah, if there's anything you want to hear a conversation about, put it in the comments.
I'm excited for the comments for this.
Yeah, we'll see.
If people make it through, I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully it was interesting.
They probably won't make it as far as this part of the conversation, so we don't need to worry.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And if you do make it this far, check out my Patreon. It's just Ryan S. Brown. Check out the workshop coming up in Zion. It's October 5th through the 11th. We have right now, as of
NP.
January 28th, we have 4 spots available for the early bird. You get $300 off for the next 4 people to sign up. We also have 5 scholarships available,
Cool. So much That's awesome.
worth $600 each.
Hey.
That's awesome.
So you can apply for that. It's free to apply. Just look it's on my website under workshops, or it's on ryansbrown.com under workshops, or it's mastersacademyofart.com under workshops. You can go there. It has all the information on the early bird, it has all the information on the workshop itself, who's going to be teaching, and
follow
scholarships.
Paintzion.np,
No,
right?
paint.zion.
Paint.zion.np.
Paint.zion.np on
it
Instagram.
Okay.
I'm killing it over there.
Yeah.
She is. She's really rocking that.
We have
account.
almost 100
Mention
followers.
your Instagram.
Stacy.whites.minch.
Katie Liddiard Art.
Okay. And everybody already follows me.
Yes, well,
I'll have to check
you
on that.
win the race in this game, Ryan. For sure.
Yeah, and thanks for joining us, and see you next time.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Good job, ladies.
Yeah.